Welcome to Between Two Pastries, a not-so-typical nutrition podcast. Nicole and Annie are licensed and registered dietitians. Join them as they discuss hot nutrition topics, challenge popular beliefs, and have a blast doing it. Here are your hosts, Nicole and Annie.
Welcome to Between Two Pastries. This is Nicole.
Hey everyone, it's Annie.
Today we're talking about a topic we've talked about before. I mean, Annie and I realized we're like, hey, even in some version, we've actually talked
done
about
this before.
Yeah. So, but we're going to bring it up
okay.
again. It is okay. So it all got prompted by a couple of, I think both of us had a couple of client stories recently. And one of the specific comments was when we're going through like what this individual was eating. Granted, I will say that this individual was coming out of treatment, but she was talking about that a specific food is what made her put her weight on, even though let's put the fact aside that she actually needed to restore, right? But it's making it that there's one food or a group of food or just foods in general that quote unquote, the minute you take them in, they make you gain weight.
Well, and I think we see it so often every day. Like you could literally be in conversation with your sister or brother or a relative or neighbor or friend or whatever. And it'll be, oh, we went out last night for tacos. And now I weighed myself this morning and now my weight went up.
Right.
So there's like this direct association between this is the food I ate. And now I see a change in weight. And oftentimes it's, well, fat is going to make me fat. That one's pretty common.
Yeah.
Because of the word fat.
Correct.
Right. But we've also heard it in carbs make you fat.
Sure.
Sugar makes you fat. Whatever.
Right.
We usually hear desserts, junk food.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. And I feel like people in society, our culture, we're at a point where it just is a roll of the tongue.
Yes.
It's legit. It's just people say it. They don't even realize like what they're saying. A, the stupidity of what they're saying, and B, how what they're saying impacts other people.
That too. Absolutely.
And their children. I mean, we've talked extensively this summer. We've spent a lot of time talking about kids and nutrition and parents and language. And this is something we see so often. And I mean, think about it, listeners, as adults, how did you come up with the belief that fat was bad?
Right.
If it wasn't from social media, current social media, because you're at an age where maybe you're not on social media, right, or you don't use it, or you didn't grow up with it, it's likely from a parent. At least that's what's been typically reported to me from adult clients 40 and above. It's parents who have taught them or gave them that feeling, impression, that fat makes you fat, or steak makes you fat, or you're going to have heart disease if you eat red meat. Or again, this comes back to the same topic we've talked about, which is having beliefs around food.
Correct.
But specifically that you are gaining or gained weight as it relates to cake.
Right.
Something.
Right.
Jesus. I don't know. Whatever someone believes is the problem.
Right. Because there's also like that mentality too. And I'm sure you've heard the saying before, like, oh, I merely look at a piece of cake and I've put on 10
I hate
pounds.
that.
I hate that too. Because it's like, okay, but if we just, so, I think the whole thing is and again, like I said, sorry to repeat myself, that we've talked about all of this before, and it still shows, case in point, that we're not there yet when it comes to normalizing all foods.
Right. Well, and frankly, Nicole, like we need to beat all of these topics into the ground, because I still know and talk to fairly regularly many listeners who comment and say things that are like, wait a second, we just did a pod on that. That's not what you should say. You're like, did you not listen to that? You need a test. You should take the quiz after.
I know, we should have a quiz after. We really should.
You're like, wait a second, we just talked about that.
That's a really good idea.
Right.
Yeah,
So
let's test your listening skills. Yeah.
Right. And that's why I say it comes off, and it's just a roll of the tongue. Like people don't even realize that they're doing this stuff. They listen to the pod and they listen to anti-diet, information, and they're like, yeah, okay. And they're on board and they get it. But then literally the next day we'll say like something oh man, I can't eat that cake. It's not good for me. I can't eat that cake. It's not healthy. I can't eat that cake. I'm going to gain 10 pounds.
Right. Again, belief, fear.
Belief.
I can't enjoy something because when I enjoy something, bad things happen.
Right.
I'm saying there's a part of that.
There is a part of it. Absolutely. Yep. And for those that I'm going to put this out there point blank, and certainly you can play devil's advocate. Those individuals who have gone through legit eating disorder treatment, and I don't want everyone to turn their ears off right now because you're thinking to yourself, well, I don't have an eating disorder. Don't talk about eating disorders. Okay. Just listen. For those who have gone through eating disorder treatment and they've taken the time, they do start to transform those beliefs, right? Or to rework them and restructure them into something completely different, or eliminate them, whatever it might be. Where now, after X number of years later, they are able to say, because they don't stop saying, if I eat that cake, it's going to make me gain weight. That thought doesn't leave you. But now they're able to say, that's irrational. I can enjoy the cake. I won't gain weight. They legit have practiced through exposure work that exact process. So they can go from an irrational thought to a rational thought plus a rational behavior.
Right. Rational action. Yeah.
Right. And now what we're seeing so often, the general public and society or culture has normalized this disorder and so much disorder, right? It's been so normalized. People don't even realize that those irrational thoughts are truly that they are irrational, and that you can have change.
Right.
Like when you initially work with someone and they're like, no, they really believe this and they really avoid it. The amount of time you have to put in to really changing one single belief is so much. I mean, it's just, so much. It can take months just to change one single belief.
That's right.
And that doesn't mean that you're sicker or more disordered than another person. It just means that belief has probably been pounded so far into you.
Yeah.
That it's just, change is hard for a lot of people, and it's hard to close your eyes and jump in. Right.
Exactly. And that was the point I was going to make based off of that is beliefs and thoughts can be powerful. The cool part, though, is that they can change. And so even if we just want to talk about this at the same time as we have as well in the past about changing those thoughts and this is really for everybody. I mean,
it doesn't have to be around food. I mean, it doesn't have to be around lots of things.
All of life, right? You'll get a thought. The thing that we have to remember is that we don't need to attach to our thoughts. We just have a thought. And I think that the more that we can become more mindful of that, more rooted in our own cores, to allow ourselves to step into our actual power to go, hey, that was a thought. Yes, that's a thought I've had repeatedly. B, do I want to keep having that thought?
Right.
It's up to you.
How does this not affect me?
Yeah. I mean,
what are my actions?
That's right. That's right. Right. Is it serving me? Is it helping me? Is it supporting more? Or do I feel like I keep running down the same path, So we can, if we can just, pause long enough, and then people will be like, well, that's hard. And it's like, well, of course it is. However, you've allowed this thought to be pounded into you. You've given it power, and it has some roots and mainstay. So it's like you can also throw in a different thought. You fake it before you make it, right?
Typically,
you just keep repeating it. Like, oh, there's that thought again. Where's my different thought? Here it is. Say that 3 times, 10 times if you can.
Correct.
Moving on until that thought comes back again, or you have to repeat the new thought another 3 to 10 times. So we have the ability to do that. It's just we have to manually then recreate that programming. Essentially, you're changing the wiring, of your brain and where that wants to go. And the more that we focus on the thought that it is that we actually want to achieve, the more our actions are going to be in line with that thought. It just is what it is.
The 3 things, Nicole. Number 1, you're totally right. And I think the problem with the concept of, here's my irrational belief, and now I've got this other thought that I use when that thought comes in, say it 3 times, 10 times, etc. People don't want to do that.
I know they don't.
It's
totally
awful.
Agree.
They don't actually want to change, but yet get frustrated with whatever it is there, as we relate this to food, the cake they can't eat, right? The quote unquote cake you can't eat. Okay. Thought number 2, there was a psychiatrist that I used to work with, and he said, and it was really funny because this was not related to food. It was related to actually like sexual thoughts. Mm-hmm. And he said, we were in a meeting of this treatment team, and he said, he kind of looked up and he's like, we all have thoughts. And of course he's like looking like, because it's related to sexual thoughts, right? So it was kind of comical when he's like, we all have thoughts. Mm-hmm. We all have thoughts about murdering someone, killing someone, ourselves, sexual, whatever.
Sure.
We all have thoughts. It's how powerful that thought ends up being to cause a reaction or a further thought to take action.
Right.
That's the difference.
Right.
So it was really, really like the whole team, like therapists, everyone was like, oh, it was pretty amazing because it was like he was stating truly the obvious. This wasn't any sort of like.
Yeah, but when you hear it in words.
Right. But he said what everyone knows.
Yeah.
But finally it was verbalized,
sure.
regarding thoughts. And it was really, really powerful. And the third thing I want to comment on, and this is something that I've worked with many patients, typically it's eating disorder plus an OCD diagnosis. So, right, like we've got a little bit more of that in there.
Yeah.
And I even pulled out the card to show you. It's my STOPP card.
Oh, yes. Okay? I've seen. Yes.
I use the STOPP method. So that's STOPP. So stop with an extra P.
Yeah.
So you're going to stop. You're going to take a breath. So something comes into your brain.
Right.
Irrational thought. Okay. Cake makes me fat. First, you have to know that that's a belief and it's irrational.
Right.
Right. Once you get to that point,
right.
You stop, you take a breath. You're going to observe. What am I thinking? What am I reacting to? What am I feeling in my body? Mm-hmm. Oh, did I just get my period?
Sure.
Did my girlfriend just break up with me? What's going on in the world?
Right.
Then you're going to pull back, put in some perspective, see the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. Is this fact or is this opinion? Mm-hmm. How would someone else see this? Mm-hmm. Like the other 50 people eating a piece of cake for the birthday party.
Sure.
Practice what works. So then you know, what's the best thing to do for me, for others, for the situation? If you're avoiding that birthday cake and it's your kid's 3rd birthday, we've got problems. Or it's your wedding day. Trust me, I've seen that.
Right.
A lot of regret that comes from that one.
Sure.
So the STOPP method is really, really cool. It works really well. Assuming that you're at that, like you've already done the work to just simply have awareness.
Completely. And you know what? We're going to add that STOPP method into the pod notes too. So you can see that and review it.
Cool.
Yeah, no, totally. And, you know, with that kind of method or just stopping in general to pause, to just look at your thought again, you can choose something different. And I think the hardest thing is, you know, people just saying, yeah, but I don't believe that though. I want to believe it, but I don't believe it. And that's like, exactly. However, again, it's that fake it till you make it. Right.
And there is a big difference between, so like, you know, with the STOPP method, is this fact or is this opinion? There is a very fine line for many people.
That's a good point.
Between those two things.
Yeah.
There are people that will truly, in their heart of hearts, believe X, Y, or Z, and they believe it to be fact. And there is no changing their mind.
Well, and what's interesting that you bring that point up based off of what we were actually talking about before we pressed record is the fact that in particular with social media, lots of false influencers, I call them false because they are. You know, it just is what it is. And it just adds to all the confusion. But if somebody's giving opinion that much power, that opinion naturally becomes their fact, their truth.
Oh, yeah.
Their everything. So that's such a good point that you make about that fine line between real fact and actual opinion. And I think that's just important to talk about. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Who do you believe? Right. How do you know which forum is truthful and which is opinion? And even if someone claims they're following, you know, oh, we're doing whatever diet stuff and they have credentials.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? And frankly, I don't know how I assume I know how you are, Nicole, but there are times where sometimes case by case, you might use and extract some of what people believe to be opinion or to use within your practice, because you know what I mean? Like there are certain aspects to, again, this is all about extremes, right? Yes. We can talk about IF, right? Specifically, there's an extreme of like this is my window and this is this window and or it stays.
Right.
But every single person is practicing IF if you want to put a name on it while they're sleeping.
Absolutely.
And we as practitioners might toy around with that. Right. So some fact, some opinion, right, can again, like I said, there's a fine line sometimes, but there is the fact and opinion that we're referring to is what in your mind is that belief?
Correct.
And where is that coming from?
Right.
What place is that coming from? Is it a place of fear? Is it I don't know. Usually that's just the only place.
It's literally the only place. Yeah, no, for sure. Everything's fear-based, right?
It's just a place of fear.
Even your desires are fear-based.
It's never happiness. Never happiness.
Right, yeah, I know.
Like that's not a place where anything comes from.
Right. Well, literally, I mean, right. Which again, doesn't that speak volumes though?
Right.
For again, the choices that people make are fear-based. Are they leading you towards happiness? Chances are you're trying to run away from what you fear.
Right. Well, but like everything in our world right now, we're all working towards the next day, the next month, the next lifetime, that if you so believe in that, right? Yeah. Like that's what no one is staying right here and right now to even use the STOPP method to be able to say, wait a second, this isn't right in my human life, in my human body right now.
Totally,
this is effed up. Yeah. No one really says that much.
So there's 2 points I wanted to go back to. The first point is talking about this whole, like, who do you believe, blah, blah, blah. I think about, in general, the whole idea of that this country in particular, we have too many options. And so like too many options, too much variety, like when other people come to like our country and they go to our grocery store, like they're overwhelmed almost to the point where they're panicky, they get anxiety. Well, that's what it does to us too. We're just so used to living on that level, unfortunately. So there is that piece. Yes. The second piece is how, again, I'm not trying to sound like, like I'm a 110-year-old person that's like, when I was a kid, I'm not trying to do that. But what I am trying to say is, let's say before the internet, right? What did we do for our information? We consulted
the encyclopedia.
Or especially if it was a health concern, what health concern was it? You made that appointment with your physician.
Correct.
Because that was the person you trusted. My teeth are hurting or whatever. You call your dentist because that's the person that you trust, right? You seek out that counsel. Whereas it's not necessarily like, sure, you can choose who that is, but there's a lot of reasons, what I'm saying? It's, people kind of just end up with who they end up. I don't know if I'm really saying that correctly, but I think you know what I'm getting at, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where we got our information. And we still could seek a second opinion.
Right.
By another physician. But what my point is that, even if you wanted a second opinion, it's still hopefully a second opinion from an actual credentialed, well-versed individual who is a master in their field, not someone with dyed hair and extensions in their eyelashes. And do you know what I'm saying? Photoshopped posing as
on TikTok,
whatever they're trying to
getting
sell.
that promotion because of the number of followers. Like that's
so that's what I'm saying. Like it's such a different thing where we really have to, again, place a little bit more discernment. And then there's the piece, unfortunately, now in our day and age, is that there's a lot of people that call themselves professionals when they really don't have the backing. They just have an interest in it. Or they were like, I did this and I'm super successful, so you should too, the exact way that I did it because it's the right way. No. Do you know what I'm saying? So anyway, so there's that whole thing that's happening in our society right now. The second point I wanted to make, because that's just stuff to think about, really. Yeah. But anyway,
keep in mind. Right.
Yeah. The second point that I wanted to go back to, though, was the going out to eat and weighing yourself, eating something different and weighing yourself. First of all, why are we getting on the scale?
Yeah, why are you weighing yourself?
Because what is essentially the point? Like, if
how does that benefit
you weigh yourself, is your life going to end by midday if you don't know that number? Do you know what I'm saying? If you do know that number, how does that change your life? For
not happier,
right? So
no matter what the number.
So it's one of those things that it's still a thing that we really need to start letting go of in general. But the other piece of it is how much individuals do not understand how our bodies work, and that our bodies are never in a place of sameness because they're constantly
not even hour to hour,
right, moving, changing, altering based off of the environment, what's being brought into the body. If they have a cold, if they have allergies, if they have a headache, if they have hormones. Their cycle, right, their hormones, did they get pregnant and they still don't know it? Do you know what I'm saying? Like all of these things. And so my point is that a body will change weight in the course of the day several times sometimes,
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And sometimes it does stay the same, whatever. It doesn't matter. I think my point is that it doesn't matter. Right. Like that doesn't determine if you are successful at something.
Well, I know, and we continue to say that, but Nicole, I think people are just bombarded with bullshit at gyms and like, wow, we got to do, and how about even this? Doctor's offices. The first thing you do is do a weight.
I know.
Why? You don't need to do my height.
I know.
So you're going to use my BMI based on a height that you took 8 years ago or whatever. Not that, I mean, typically your adult height is about the same, but like, it's just asinine.
Yeah.
And this is what people don't realize. The only reason your practitioner is weighing you is for insurance purposes. So they can put that in there for insurance to let them know you're overweight, obese, normal, underweight. That's it. That's it. And there's nothing they're going to actually do about it. And if they have to intervene, they're just going to send you to someone else.
Right.
I mean, it's not helpful, even a little bit, to be on a scale. How much better would you feel about yourself if you just didn't care about it?
I know. Well, and the thing is too, is like you were talking about, tacos and then weighing yourself the next day and you're up too. It's like people forget that, okay, first of all, if you're that rigid in your eating where you're literally eating the same thing day in and day out, day in and day out, day in and day out, guess what?
Another problem.
Water isn't really going to fluctuate there. Sodium levels, everything literally remains the same, right? Super boring, but remains the same.
Totally. Right.
But the minute you take in anything that's just, and if you're not used to it,
correct,
then yes, you are going to see some different fluctuations. When your body's used to a varied diet, different things on an all the time basis, those fluctuations are extremely teeny.
Oh, 100%.
Because it's just water fluctuations on a day-to-day basis.
Oh, but Nicole, it's just, the scale is all fat. So if I eat fat, I'm going to get fat.
Sure. Right.
And it's not true, obviously. I mean, that's super irrational, but like, and I assume you've had this experience where you have that client or patient where you put pizza on their menu or enchilada or whatever, a high fat meal. And the next day they're weighed, and because that's part of the deal, and now they explode at you and are upset, and again, it's like, because they're restoring weight, that's okay, but once they reach the point of, well, my weight can't go past this, there's just so many rules involved around weight. And unfortunately, they're bleeding into rules around food, which is bleeding into our thoughts around all of these things, which is it just keeps dominoing. And
well, and when it's to this extreme too, and it's just worth going there,
yeah.
Why are we putting this much energy and this much control into something we actually can't control anyway?
Correct. Right. There's only very, very little of it can you control.
We can't control the fact that if your body is going to retain some water because it needs to retain some water, it's going to retain some water.
There's nothing you can do about it. But we've made pills for that stuff.
Oh gosh.
Right? I mean, that's just it. We as a society have literally found every way to defy our bodies, to make us smaller, to make it so our body just isn't what it's supposed to be doing.
Right. Yeah.
Which is really sad.
No, it's super sad. Yeah.
It's super sad. But it's become, again, to circle back to what we've been talking about, or the purpose of this pod, it has become normalized to think that literally specific foods make you gain weight. It's the same thing, the same type of concept of X food gives me gas. X food makes my belly hurt. X food, truly. Because it's that irrational belief. Now, can that happen sometimes?
Sure.
But here's the deal. It's not the only food that's giving you gas. There's like when you have, like, there's a whole process involved with that. Like, what's giving you gas is not what you just ate.
Right. It's not what you always
like
think
legit.
No. Yeah. And it also doesn't have to mean anything.
It could be lots of different foods.
Yeah.
Like, this is just, you know what's in your colon right now? You know what bacteria is in there? Do they talk to you? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's stuff like that. But we do that with everything. We make these assumptions like, oh, dairy makes me sick. Makes my tummy hurt. Does it? Or does your thoughts around dairy make your tummy hurt?
For sure.
I don't know.
For sure.
I'd probably go more with that one.
Right.
Again, it's just irrational beliefs, and it bleeds into specific foods lead to X.
Right. And just to put a little blurb in, we do talk about this in our book as well. And we do have some worksheets that go along with it. We also have some additional video that we talk about some specific things to break down. So just thought I would throw that out there.
But if this is something that you do quite often, and it literally is shaping your meals or how your day goes or your relationships, get help, because this is stuff that legit is like true to form exposure work. Sit down, this is what you do, and it literally is a smooth process. And I don't want to say it's easy for the practitioner to lay this all out, and it's like a teacher and student. Literally, it's just homework, and it's very easily changeable. If you don't want to live this way, you don't have to.
That's
most people. That's the problem, though, is most people really thrive in their whole weird, irrational delusions. They love it there.
Well, because their reality is scary.
Correct.
There's something scary and uncomfortable about their real reality.
About liking yourself and accepting yourself and being okay. Right?
Or about anything else that's going on in their life that they feel they have no power over.
Right.
Or voice over. I mean, this is why we all get small. And when I say get small, I mean hide. We hide.
Literally. Right.
We hide in different ways and forms. We obsess.
Food is the enemy.
Right. And we obsess. And when we obsess, that takes up all the energy. It takes up all the headspace. So that is all our focus is, because it's all we have space for.
Correct. And it becomes our true belief pattern.
Yeah, of course it does.
It's like literally, this is it. This is the be all end all. And that's why when you're talking to someone else about it, for example, that's not a practitioner, your husband, your wife, relative, friend, and they look at you like, what the fuck is wrong with you? That's really what's in their head.
Right.
If they're not saying it, they're thinking it. And it becomes very challenging to have relationships with people where irrational beliefs become majority of their beliefs. Like of their living.
Agreed.
It becomes very, very hard to have relationships with irrational believers.
For sure.
Around food and anything.
Right. Correct.
For sure around food.
Of course.
You will stop being invited to dinner. That's usually step number one.
Yeah.
You start losing all. You're like, where is everyone tonight? You missed that memo that they're all out for whatever cake because they don't want to be around it.
I know.
It can be really challenging.
Yeah.
So,
all right, guys. Well, check out the pod notes and share any thoughts you may have.
Cool.
Thanks.
Bye.
Have questions you want to hear discussed on the show? Find us on Facebook or visit between2pastries.com and drop us a line. Want to support the show? Find us on Patreon for exclusive content. If you love the show, find us on iTunes or your favorite podcast platform. Hit the subscribe button and leave us a review.